My fiancé smirked. Moments before dropping to one knee and proposing. To my sister at our family barbecue. Applause. Cameras. Her fake tears. I said nothing. The next morning she found his ring, a $30 knockoff, with a note. Reputation? Ruined. I toasted them from Santorini. Say yes, someone shouted, and she did, loudly, proudly, while he slipped the ring on her finger. My throat locked. I stood just a few steps away, invisible in a scene I was never supposed to watch. The music from the speaker kept playing, cheerful and upbeat, as if mocking the heaviness that pressed down on my chest. The smell of grilled kebabs clung to the air, laughter bubbled around me, and the clinking of glasses sounded like thunder in my ears. I looked at my hands, still holding a plate with chicken skewers and potato salad, and realized I hadn't moved for several minutes. Around me people cheered. Beautiful couple, an aunt gushed, dabbing her eyes. Cousins angled their phones, trying to capture the best shot for social media. My mother clasped her hands together, her face glowing with pride, though I couldn't tell whether it was for the man kneeling or for the daughter who had stolen him. My fiancé's smirk said it all. He looked like a man who had won a prize, not just any prize. My sister. The one person I trusted most to stand beside me, not in front of me. His eyes sparkled as he rose, lifting her into his arms as applause thundered again. Me. I was a ghost at my own family's celebration. I heard my cousin whisper, "She didn't even know, did she?" Her words stung because they were true. I had been planning a wedding, dreaming of white dresses and vows, while he had been planning this performance. My sister leaned into him, tears streaming down her cheeks. To anyone else they looked genuine, but I knew her better. She had perfected those crocodile tears since childhood, crying to get the last piece of cake, crying to escape chores, crying to turn the blame onto me whenever we fought. And now she used them to make the crowd believe this was love. "Look at that ring," someone gasped. Phones zoomed in on the diamond sparkling under the fairy lights strung across the garden. My stomach twisted. That was supposed to be mine. That proposal, that applause, that future. It was all supposed to be mine. But no one looked at me. No one asked, "Wait, wasn't she engaged to him?" They were too swept up in the show. I could hear the cameras clicking, my sister's fake sobs, his arrogant laugh. My body was still, but inside I was breaking in ways no one could see. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run to the center of that circle, snatch the ring off her finger, and demand answers. But the words never came. My silence was louder than any outburst I could have made. I saw my father glance at me once, confusion flickering across his face. But he said nothing. He joined the others, raising his glass in a toast, pretending this was normal. My mother avoided my eyes altogether. Maybe she knew the truth, maybe she didn't, but her smile never faltered as she hugged them both. So stood there, still clutching my untouched plate of food, watching the two people I trusted most betray me in front of everyone I loved. My silence became my mask, hiding the storm that raged inside me. Each cheer from the crowd was like a knife, carving deeper into wounds I didn't even know I could feel. It was then I realized something painful. Silence wasn't just survival. It was strategy. If I exploded now, they would call me bitter. They would label me jealous. My pain would become the punchline. So I swallowed it even as it burned. The next morning my phone buzzed nonstop. Family group chats, friends tagging me in photos, distant relatives posting about the happiest couple. I didn't reply to a single message. Instead, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every detail of the night before until I thought I might go insane. Then the chaos began. My sister's proud Instagram post, her holding the ring to the camera, his arm around her waist, suddenly disappeared. Screenshots flew around before she could delete them. Along with those screenshots came the whispers. "The ring is fake." I almost didn't believe it. Until my cousin forwarded me a picture of the box she had found in the trash. Inside it was a receipt from a discount jewelry site, the price circled in pen. $30. That was the worth of the diamond she had flaunted in front of everyone. And there was more. A note tucked inside the box, written in his messy scrawl. "Shiny things don't always mean value." I could imagine her reaction. The shrieks, the slammed doors, the humiliation burning her cheeks. For once her performance failed her. She couldn't pretend this away. For the first time since the barbecue I laughed. A hollow, bitter laugh, but it was real. By midday the whispers had turned into storms. Relatives who had clapped the loudest last night now muttered under their breath. The perfect couple was no longer a fairy tale but a scandal. My sister refused to leave her room and he disappeared altogether, avoiding calls and messages. The same cousins who had posted videos of the proposal now shared jokes about the fake ring. Family members exchanged knowing glances, their voices dripping with judgment. Even my mother's forced smile began to crack when neighbors asked awkward questions. Me. I didn't need to say a word. My silence carried its own power. I didn't rush to explain, didn't gloat, didn't confront. I simply watched as their reputation crumbled, brick by brick. The very stage they built to humiliate me had collapsed beneath them. That night, lying in bed, I stared out the window at the quiet street. The anger was still there, the betrayal still raw, but there was also something else. A strange, quiet relief. The proposal that shattered me had also shattered them. And it was only the beginning. The house was quieter after the scandal but not peaceful. Whispers traveled through its walls like smoke that never cleared. I often passed my sister in the hallway, chin lifted, shoulders squared, pretending nothing had touched her. But her eyes betrayed her, darting to see if anyone was watching, blinking too fast when someone mentioned the proposal. I didn't speak to her, not directly. Instead, I became the audience she didn't want. From the corner of the room at family dinners, I watched the cracks form. When relatives asked light-heartedly, "So when's the wedding?" her smile stiffened. She deflected with excuses. Venue hunting, budget planning, scheduling conflicts. The truth lingered unspoken, heavy in the air. At night, I heard muffled voices through the thin walls. Her scolding him for embarrassing her, him snapping back about her unrealistic demands. Their harmony was already unraveling and I didn't need to lift a finger. The more she tried to hide it, the more visible it became. People love fairy tales but they love scandals more. And their story was becoming the latter. They tried to patch the cracks with curated smiles. Social media became their stage again. Pictures at restaurants, selfies in front of coffee shops, captions dripping with affection. But I noticed the details. His tie was crooked in one photo, his eyes tired, his smile more like a grimace. In another, her hand hovered near his shoulder but didn't quite touch him. They were together in frame but miles apart in spirit. Relatives whispered too. Aunt Miriam leaned over during tea one afternoon and murmured, "They're trying too hard." She didn't need to explain. I saw it too, the desperation to appear perfect while reality frayed behind them. Money became another battlefield. I overheard him boasting about a new business deal, only for my father to quietly reveal later that he was borrowing money again. My sister, raised on appearances and status, couldn't stomach the embarrassment. Their arguments spilled into the open. Sharp words exchanged in kitchens, glares thrown across dinner tables. They were crumbling in slow motion and I had the front row seat. Their downfall should have been enough for me, but healing doesn't arrive with someone else's misery. It comes with facing your own wounds. And mine were deep. I started small. I bought a notebook, the kind with soft pages and a sturdy cover, and I wrote. At first the words came out jagged: anger, heartbreak, betrayal. But over time the ink changed tone. I wrote about resilience, about dreams I had once abandoned for him, about places I wanted to see without anyone beside me. So I traveled. Not far at first. A day trip to the coast, a weekend in the mountains. I let the air cleanse me, the sunsets remind me that endings could still be beautiful. Each time I returned home I felt lighter. The memories of the proposal still haunted me, but they didn't suffocate me anymore. I cried, yes. Some nights I curled under the blanket, silent tears soaking the pillow. But each tear washed away a piece of the bitterness, leaving behind something harder, sharper, steadier. I wasn't the same woman who froze at that barbecue. I was rebuilding myself one quiet victory at a time. While I healed, I also learned patience. Revenge doesn't always roar, it whispers. I never spread lies, I didn't need to. The truth was enough. But truth in the right place and at the right time can be devastating. A subtle comment at a family gathering, a raised eyebrow when someone praised them, a carefully timed silence. It all fueled the fire. When my cousin asked about the wedding date, I simply smiled and said, "I'm sure she'll explain soon." That was all it took. The seed of doubt grew on its own. When I overheard my sister bragging about his successful business, I mentioned almost casually, "Funny, I heard he was behind on payments again." My tone was soft, innocent even, but the effect was sharp. By the end of the week, the whispers had multiplied. I became invisible in their downfall. My fingerprints were nowhere, yet my presence lingered everywhere. Watching her facade slip gave me a strange sense of balance, not satisfaction exactly but justice. She had paraded my humiliation in public. Now her own mask was slipping in front of the same audience. The unraveling reached its peak on a Sunday evening. We had gathered for dinner at my parents' house. The table was full, roasted chicken, rice, salad, but the atmosphere was tense. My sister and he arrived late, already arguing in hushed tones that didn't stay hushed for long. Halfway through the meal his phone buzzed. He snatched it quickly but not quickly enough. My sister grabbed it from his hand, her voice rising. "Who's Sanaa?" she demanded, waving the phone. The room fell into silence. He stammered, face flushing. "Just business." "Business," she snapped. "At midnight?" With hearts in the messages. My father cleared his throat trying to calm them, but it was too late. Years of performance collapsed in seconds. She shouted about his debts, his lies, his affairs. He barked back about her vanity, her obsession with appearances, her constant nagging. And there was the truth neither of them could hide anymore, spilling across the dinner table for everyone to see. The relatives who had cheered their engagement sat in stunned silence, forks paused midair. My mother's hands trembled as she reached for her glass. I sat quietly, not smiling, not gloating, just watching. This wasn't my victory to claim. It was theirs to lose. By the time dessert was served, they had stormed out, leaving behind nothing but whispers and shame. The perfect couple had shattered completely, and everyone finally saw them for what they truly were. I still remember the night after their public collapse. The air inside my parents' home felt heavy, as if even the walls carried the weight of what had been exposed at that dinner table. I went to my room, closed the door, and for the first time in months, I slept without nightmares. By morning I had made my decision. A week later I was standing on the cliffs of Santorini. Whitewashed houses spilled down the hillside, their blue rooftops glistening under the Mediterranean sun. The sea stretched endlessly, calm and eternal, a sharp contrast to the chaos I had left behind. I ordered a glass of local wine at a small cafe overlooking the water. When the glass arrived, beads of condensation sliding down its side, I lifted it in a quiet toast, not to their misery, not even to karma, but to my own survival. The first sip was liberation. The salty breeze brushed against my face as though it were wiping away the last fingerprints of betrayal. Nobody here knew me. Nobody whispered about a proposal gone wrong. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't someone's fiancé, someone's sister, or someone's scandal. I was just me. Freedom has a peculiar taste. It feels sweet but uncertain. In Santorini, I began testing that freedom in small ways. I joined a group tour to a local vineyard not because I cared about winemaking, but because I wanted to sit with strangers who knew nothing of my story. At the vineyard, a woman from Spain offered me cheese from her plate. A man from Australia told a joke so silly that I laughed until my sides ached. And no one asked about my sister. No one asked about him. They laughed with me, not at me. They saw me for who I was in that moment, not who I had been. In the evenings I walked along the cobbled streets, ducking into bakeries for warm pastries. I scribbled in my notebook while watching the sunset bleed into the sea. Slowly my heart loosened its grip on the past. The betrayal that once consumed me shrank to a shadow that no longer dictated my every breath. One night, under strings of fairy lights at a seaside tavern, a kind Greek musician asked me to dance. My first instinct was to refuse, to cling to the safety of my chair. But then I remembered, I had promised myself a new chapter. So I stood, I danced, and for the first time I felt the rhythm of life again. Even as I healed, news of them reached me, carried through family phone calls and whispered updates. My mother's voice, always careful not to sound too gleeful or too sorrowful, mentioned how my sister had stopped posting online. "She's quieter these days," she admitted. I didn't press for details, but others volunteered them anyway. A cousin messaged late one evening, "He's in trouble again. Debts. People are talking." Another wrote, "She stormed out of a family lunch. Wouldn't stop yelling about how he ruined her life." I didn't gloat, but I listened. From across the sea, I imagined their once picture-perfect facade crumbling completely. The ring that started it all had been fake, and now so was everything else. His reputation sank, her pride shattered, and together they became a cautionary tale whispered about at weddings and family dinners. Don't be like them. Each story that reached me was like another page turning in a book I no longer belonged to. Their collapse wasn't mine to control anymore. It was theirs to endure. Watching from afar, detached yet aware, gave me a strange peace. People often expect closure to come with confrontation. They expect screaming matches, doors slammed, truths shouted across rooms. But I discovered closure in the absence of all that. I never called him to demand answers. I never sat across from my sister hurling accusations or demanding apologies. What could they possibly say? What words could undo the humiliation, the betrayal, the nights I spent questioning my worth? None. And so I gave them nothing. My silence was sharper than any argument. It denied them the stage they craved, the chance to twist my pain into their defense. Every time my sister glanced at me across a room and found no reaction, every time he avoided my eyes and I didn't so much as flinch, it was its own form of power. They destroyed themselves with their own choices, their own greed, their own lies. I didn't need to lift a hand or raise my voice. And in that I found closure. Not the kind tied up with neat bows, but the kind that feels solid, real, and irreversible. Sitting on a balcony in Santorini one evening, the horizon painted in gold and pink, I wrote my final entry in the notebook I had carried through this journey. My words were steady, unshaken. Sometimes the sweetest revenge is no revenge at all. It is silence. It is survival. It is building a life they cannot touch. I realized then that revenge doesn't have to roar. It doesn't have to be dramatic or loud. Sometimes it's a quiet toast by the sea. Sometimes it's a smile you give a stranger without fear of judgment. Sometimes it's simply waking up without the weight of someone else's betrayal dragging you down. When I returned home weeks later, I wasn't the same woman who had stood frozen at that barbecue. I carried myself differently, not with arrogance but with calm. Family members looked at me with quiet admiration, some even with guilt. And when I crossed paths with my sister, her eyes darted away first. That was enough. The lesson I carried forward was simple. Life is too precious to waste on people who thrive on deceit. The true victory lies not in their downfall but in my rise, in the laughter I reclaimed, in the peace I found, and in the strength I now held. I didn't need their apologies. I didn't need their explanations. I already had everything I wanted: freedom, dignity, and the knowledge that they were trapped in the mess they created, while I had walked away.